One and all. Thank you for joining us in the episode number 14 of SRE Practitioner Series. I'm your host, Suresh GP. I'm happy to have today Stephen Townshend, a developer advocate at SRE at SquaredUp, joining us all the way from New Zealand. Thank you, Stephen, for joining us today with our viewers to share your real-world insights on the world of site-reliability engineering.
Well, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Awesome. Now, before we kind of get started, I know that there's a lot of things that you do. To give us a little bit of a background about your interest and what really made you click towards the site reliability engineering aspect.
Yeah, so I did performance testing and engineering for 13 years. And well, there were a number of things that happened, but one is an opportunity came up internally in the organization I worked in. There was a new SRE incubator team, and I thought that sounds fun. But for a while in performance testing engineering, I'd felt a little bit pigeonholed into just running load tests and only working in the delivery space, not having any access chance to work in production. So for me, SRE was a way to sort of broaden the scope of the work that I do and hopefully have a bigger impact on the organization.
Awesome. So let's get started off. Our first question for us today for the viewers is like, you have seen SRE in practice. So we want to look at what are some of the key challenges facing real world organizations when they go about implementing SRE. I mean, some people say that SRE is a new wine in an old bottle. But then what is the reality? Let's get into some reality strike. We are not Googles of the world. We don't have massive systems to do that. We still run in monolithic applications. Is it still relevant, and what kind of challenges have you seen in real world?
I think the first thing is an organization who feels like they need SRE probably has an issue with priority at the moment. Yeah. But probably funding and prioritizing new shiny things, new engagements, capital expenditure projects, rather than investing in operations and improvement work and taking what we already have and making it work better. Right. So that's really challenging in that context. Yeah. So unless that priority changes, then SRE is going to be a side project at best.
Correct. And it also means that sometimes people are going to be, we don't have dedicated resources of SRE. Do you see that happening? They have to do multitasking. Is that still happening in most of the organizations? They don't have a dedicated SRE.
Yes, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't think that SRE is necessarily a role. It can be. Sure. It's more about a mindset and concepts. And as long as you're working towards more reliable services and making operational work more effective, that's SRE, really.
Yeah. And in terms of, people talk about focusing on outcomes. Is it actually being delivered with SLOs today? Do you think that SLOs are becoming the magic wand as organizations move from SLA to SLO, that outcomes are being achieved? Where are we in that journey?
Oh, okay. So SLOs in particular, I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for my opinions on SLOs. So I think that SLOs are great in theory, right? Great in concept, but they're the kind of thing that have a lot of prerequisites to work well. So for example, SLOs, for anyone who's not particularly familiar, the idea that you set some objectives for your reliability with a customer focus, like we want this service to be this available or to perform, to respond this quickly for these customers, to build that reliability into the way that you work, right? And the whole point of SLOs is that you have an error budget. Right. So if you say this service is going to be 99% available, you have 1% of time to have outages. And if you're not using that time, then you're kind of defeating the purpose of SLOs, because it's meant to be time to take risks, to push things, to experiment. If you're not using that time, then SLOs aren't being used effectively. So that's, in most organizations, they get as far as defining SLOs, but there's no error budget and no consequences for breaking the error budget. So that's a complete waste of time. Sure. But also, I will say, having to try and implement SLOs myself is extraordinarily difficult unless you have a simplified decoupled architecture, you have streamlined teams who have ownership of a complete service end to end, you have funding and interest and priority, you have business and technology and product and leadership all together on the same page. That it's very challenging to do without all those things, all those pieces in place.
Now, in terms of the context of moving towards SRE, the world is actually still having two views of thoughts, right? One end, you're looking at immutable infrastructures, moving towards being serverless. So what would you suggest for organizations which are just stepping on the journey? They still have a lot of legacy in place, but they're very aspirational to do SRE. So what would be your advice for people who still have a lot more on the monolithic applications and legacy applications still in place? Is still SRE relevant for them?
Yes, I think before I talk about it, there's a couple more things which are challenging for organizations in the real world that I just want to quickly mention.
Sure.
So first of all, culture. So if you've got a culture of blame, if there's no sort of safety to take risks and experiment, then SRE is bound to fail. If there's a them and us culture when everyone's blaming each other and there's no working together, that's going to make it really hard.
Right.
If you have a situation with really complex coupled architecture where you've got 10 different teams who service one customer interaction, that makes SRE extra difficult, possible, but very hard.
Right.
So there's those things. And there's a misconception that if you have older technology, like physical servers or mainframes or VMs, that it doesn't fit the hip new buzzwords and standards and it's not cloud native, then you can't do SRE, but that's not true. So kind of flowing onto what you just asked, I think that the first thing to do is to come to an agreement on what you mean by SRE,
right?
Because it means different things to different people.
Right.
So make a definition that works for your unique context in your organization, right?
Yeah.
My definition, as I kind of alluded to, is if you're working to improve reliability and the effectiveness of operational work, and how you do that, I mean, that's what SRE is to me.
Sure.
And how you do that will depend on your unique context, but it will probably involve some culture change, some process change, maybe adjusting your structure of your teams and leveraging technology to simplify and automate.
Yeah.
That's SRE, right? And you can do that in mainframes or with physical servers. You don't
Right.
have to have containers or serverless or immutable infrastructure,
Yeah. And then, in fact, the other question comes up is, can we do SRE without DevOps in place? And we don't have pipelines. We really want to do SRE, vice versa. So the tussle between the DevOps and the SRE world still exists. I mean, it's kind of fighting for the bigger wallet share. So what is your take on DevOps team, SRE teams? How does it play out?
That's interesting, the way that was worded, because people say that you say the word DevOps and I hear it being used to describe pipelines, essentially automation of deployments and creation of resources and that kind of thing. So, and that's not, that's just, for me, that's not what DevOps is. DevOps and SRE are essentially the same concepts, just applied in different ways. Right. It's like SRE is just DevOps with a focus on production. That's my, and operations. That's my view. So I don't think they compete at all. They are the same area of work, just slightly different focuses.
Sure.
That's my view anyway.
Right. And in terms of, particularly in the Asia Pacific market that we see site-reliable engineering, I see a lot more adoption from banking and financial services. So is that a particular industry that is getting pushed hard on implementing SRE, or is it kind of cross domains, cross verticals that you see being implemented at workplace?
I hadn't actually seen that so much myself. I'd seen it more with tech product companies in New Zealand anyway. Right. I'd heard before that banking and organizations which are heavily regulated and they have a lot of adversity for risk are interested in SRE because they want, to check all the boxes and have really reliable platforms.
And the other one is bigger part that's coming around is on the observability space, right? I mean, a lot of people now think that observability is the new shiny toy. We have talked a lot about monitoring. Let's step the game and move into observability. What's your take on some of the prerequisites, do's and don'ts from an observability standpoint?
So first of all, observability is just a buzzword as well in a way, but I do like it. I think I like the word, the ability to observe what is internally happening within your technology systems, and also being able to verify individual customers and what their experience is and that kind of thing, and trace that through. Right. That's great. I think observability really is about distributed tracing at this point.
Sure.
Which anecdotally I've heard from a guest on my own podcast that something like 1% of organizations have implemented. Yet everyone in the observability space is working very hard in the OpenTelemetry project and other products to set up distributed tracing.
Sure.
So it's not a solved problem. Most organizations don't have the ability to understand what is happening internally in their very complex technology systems, regardless of how they change them. That just isn't true. So we talk about, oh, we've got it all because we bought this product. Well, no, you probably don't.
Right.
Let's dig into that a bit further.
Yeah, no, that's true. And in terms of the other big thing is on chaos engineering, right? I mean, at one time that we had Netflix go through chaos engineering, and now a lot of companies are looking at various other tools to implement chaos engineering. So is that a kind of a way that you would advise who should do chaos engineering, or is it something like experimentation, have fun with that? What is your take on the chaos engineering adoption? It's
not an area of expertise for me. Sure. I would say that don't try and do chaos engineering until the culture's right. Right. If you don't have things in a place where it's okay to fail, or you have a certain level of, there's some sort of preparation for it. Otherwise, if you're just purposely trying to bring systems down and no one's ready for it, there's no time for them to deal with it anyway, and no chance to actually remediate it and set up something to make it better in the future. Well, what's the point?
Right. Absolutely. So a final thought is in terms of, in an SRE, what should we avoid? I mean, what are some of the things that we need to be aware so that we don't fall into a trap when it comes to implementing site reliability engineering as a concept within the organization and across the organization?
A small one to start with: don't just rebrand your existing operations and call it SRE to try and attract new talent, or without actually changing anything about it. It's kind of just not helpful. The second thing is, don't take the Google SRE book and what Google and Facebook do literally. Don't try and copy them. You're not going to get any great outcomes. You have to figure out what works for your unique context. There's no other way. If you are working towards and achieving more reliable services, your operations team are happier and more effective, then in my opinion, you are doing SRE. It doesn't matter how you do it, right? This way. Also, avoid all the other buzzwords and what other companies are doing. Don't try and mimic anyone else. Just focus on your unique context. And also, don't try and do SRE too early or too late. Okay. So what I mean by that is, if you're a startup and you are just trying to get the right product fit for the market, then that's what it's about. It's about building the right product. If you try and push too hard to build the product right and get all the quality and the reliability going, you're just taking investment and time away at the wrong time, when you really need to be first of all validating the product first, right? But at the same time, when the scale comes, you need to flip the button, flip the switch, and build the reliability at the right time. And if you wait too late, you've built up a bunch of tech debt. There's going to be burning incidents happening all the time.
Awesome. That's a great point to do that. So your closing comments on if someone is willing or looking forward to making a career in SRE, what would you advise? Is it good, bad? Is it going to be promising for the next 5 years? I'm looking at whether I will have jobs for the next 5 to 10 years as an SRE.
I think it's a good industry with plenty of future. Be careful who you join and listen to how they talk about SRE. If they don't talk about the culture part of it and improvement work and having the space and time to actually make a difference, then that's a red flag. And I would say, if you want to just have a go at SRE in your organization, here's my advice would be: just pick a service which is important to your organization, a service or a value stream, whatever it is, benchmark its current reliability. And it's amazing, most organizations won't know what it is. And when I say reliability, I mean, how available is it? What are the error rates? How saturated are the resources? What's the latency or response time? How many incidents are you having? How often are you deploying? And what volume of traffic is on it? Once you know these things, you will uncover lots of opportunities and lots of pain points to work on. And that's SRE.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephen, for your valuable insight today at our SRE Practitioner Series. Viewers, I hope you had a great session from Stephen. Stephen, if someone wants to reach out to you, post this one, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Stephen Townshend, Stephen with a PH, Townsend with an SH on LinkedIn, or on Twitter. I am _Kiwi_SRE.
Right.
Yeah, that's the best way to get you.
Awesome. So he's carved a niche on the Kiwi SRE is Stephen Townshend. Thank you so much for sharing with us, and I hope that our viewers are getting motivated every day to become the world-class SREs. And I look forward to seeing you all in our next episode of SRE Practitioner Series. Until then, keep watching and post on your comments for the future episodes for us to take you beyond. Thank you so much.